understanding this relationship with the pleasure-pain balance can be more powerful. Just understanding the more friction and pain that you experience, the greater the dopamine reward you will get later, and that serves as its own amplifier. You know, we've been talking mainly about dopamine and its scheduling and about the fact that it can be attached to anything. I think many people find it hard to subjectively attach dopamine to something they don't want to do. How do you get motivated? Well, one way to do that is if you are good at subjectively attaching dopamine to the pursuit, just knowing, okay, I really am hungry for this. I'm gonna tell myself that making it 1% of the way is a success, and I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna keep ratcheting on. And that's great if you can do that. But for people that can't do that, understanding this relationship with the pleasure-pain balance can be more powerful. Just understanding the more friction and pain that you experience, the greater the dopamine reward you will get later, and that serves as its own amplifier of the whole process of pursuing more dopamine. And then the other aspect of it is that anytime that we're leaning into action, it has the possibility of being an amplifying process or a depleting process. And the key to that is making sure that you're balancing the dopamine and epinephrine systems. You know, epinephrine being this molecule of universal currency of energy output. Could be out of hate or it could be out of love. Epinephrine doesn't care, and actually dopamine doesn't care. None of these systems care about us. They just work underneath our conscious control. But when you start to understand that hitting the gas pedal is great, but hitting the gas pedal and then coming off the gas pedal a little bit, you can kind of sit in a more relaxed RPM, actually allows you to go much further. I think that people leaning into action is terrific. I always say you can either be back on your heels, flat-footed, or forward center of mass. The best situation is actually to be right upright, but just know that you can be forward center of mass at any point. And to take it back to sex and reproduction, because it's a salient example, the arc of sex is very interesting, because when you think about autonomic arousal, it turns out that the arousal stage of sex actually involves release of dopamine, but is what we call parasympathetic dominant. It actually has to be relaxed enough in order to occur, okay? Everyone can read between the lines on this. Orgasm is actually I don't want to say full-blown, it is a sympathetic nervous system driven response. It's identical to the stress system. It's driven by the same neural circuits as stress. And then what comes afterward? The parasympathetic system goes back up again. It's that deep relaxation. So why do I say this? Not to talk about sex to be, you know, to serve as a highlighter, but rather our species arrived here because of this dance between arousal and relaxation, arousal and relaxation. And one thing we can say for sure about every human being that's alive now is that their parents, at least once, mastered this dance of relaxed and excited, but not too excited, then really excited, and then relaxed. That dance was mastered by all of our parents, and that's what delivered us here to some extent. And so what this means is that all the neural circuits, from the ones that led to our conception to the ones that lead to us pursuing goals, have this balance. It's almost like a seesaw. There's activation and calm, and it's that dynamic process that's important to master in every endeavor. So we use sex as an example, but in pursuit of goals, you have to learn how to pursue short-term goals, and like the goals within the day, make a cup of coffee, and long-term goals. And when I said dopamine is what's setting your time perception, it's an interval timer. What you're saying is, it's like the 2 marshmallow experiment done at Stanford. Defer the dopamine, and actually, if you can, turn the weighting into the dopamine, and then you can extend out the reward for, you know, waiting for the second marshmallow 15 minutes later, et cetera, et cetera. And there are many, many examples of this in the psychology and neuroscience literature. And I would say finally, in 2020, we finally as a field got a clear idea of how dopamine is really working. Because before it was all about work, dopamine hit, right? Sex gives you a dopamine hit, the internet gives you a dopamine hit. What we didn't realize is that repeated engagement with these things leads to dopamine depletion, and that the pain and pleasure balance is always at work.